I woke up mornings, the lion still added dying on the floor. "Terrible presence," I cried. "Eat me or die." Welcome to Ostracon, a podcast that translates fragments into the whole from which they came. Today we're reading The Lion for Real by Allen Ginsberg. Allen Ginsberg was born in 1926 in Newark. He died in 1997 in New York City. He grew up in Paterson, New Jersey. His father was also a poet. His mother was an immigrant from Russia. Allen Ginsberg is the author of poetic works such as Howl, which was the subject of an obscenity trial and deals with the vision and struggles of other artists of his era, and Kaddish, which is a prayer poem related to the death of his mother. He adds in his own brief autobiography to the notes at the end of the City Lights edition of Howl, quote, "High school in Paterson till 17, Columbia College, Merchant Marine, Texas and Denver, Copy Boy, Times Square, Amigos in Jail, Dishwashing, Book Reviews, Mexico City, Market Research, Satori in Harlem, Yucatan and Chiapas, 1954, West Coast 3 years. Later, Arctic Sea Trip, Tangier, Venice, Amsterdam, Paris. Read at Oxford, Harvard, Columbia, Chicago, quit. Wrote Kaddish 1959, made tape to leave behind and fade in Orient a while." Allen Ginsberg was part of a literary movement called the Beat Poets. Beat was a term coined by Jack Kerouac, who, by the way, wrote at a desk beneath a crucifix. Beat is short for beatific. And this group of poets, however flawed they may have been, and in some cases quite deeply misled, they were nonetheless ecstatic, wild, and hungry. They believed, it seems, that there was a beatific vision to find. And again, though they may have been misdirected, they were out after it. The Lion for Real captures a great deal of the tension between these two. So let's read it. The Lion for Real. I came home and found a lion in my living room. Rushed out on the fire escape, screaming, "Lion! Lion!" 2 stenographers pulled their brunette hair and banged the window shut. I hurried home to Paterson and stayed 2 days. Called up my old Reichian analyst, who'd kicked me out of therapy for smoking marijuana. "It happened," I panted. "There's a lion in my room." "I'm afraid any discussion would have no value." He hung up. I went to my old boyfriend. We got drunk with his girlfriend. I kissed him and announced I had a lion with a mad gleam in my eye. We wound up fighting on the floor. I bit his eyebrow and he kicked me out. I ended masturbating in his Jeep parked in the street, moaning, "Lion." Found Joey, my novelist friend, and roared at him, "Lion!" He looked at me, interested, and read me his spontaneous Ignu high poetries. I listened for lions. All I heard was elephant, tiglon, hippogriff, unicorn, ants. But figured he really understood me when we made it in Ignaz Wisdom's bathroom. But next day, he sent me a leaf from his Smoky Mountain retreat. I love you, little Bobo, with your delicate golden lions. But there being no self and no bars, therefore the zoo of your dear father hath no lion. You said your mother was mad. Don't expect me to produce the monster for your bridegroom. Confused, dazed, and exalted, bethought me of real lion, starved in his sink in Harlem. Opened the door of the room, was filled with the bomb blast of his anger. he roaring hungrily at the plaster walls, but nobody could hear him outside. Through the window, my eye caught the edge of the red neighbor apartment building standing in deafening stillness. We gazed at each other. His implacable yellow eye in the red halo of fur waxed roomy on my own. But he stopped roaring and bared a fanged greeting. I turned my back and cooked broccoli for supper on an iron gas stove, boiled water, and took a hot bath in the old tub under the sink board. He didn't eat me, though I regretted him starving in my presence. Next week he wasted away, a sick rug full of bones, wheaten hair falling out, enraged and reddening eye as he lay aching huge hairy head on his paws by the egg crate bookcase filled up with thin volumes of Plato and Buddha. Sat by his side every night, averting my eyes from his hungry moth-eaten face. Stopped eating myself. He got weaker and roared at night while I had nightmares, eaten by lion in bookstore on Cosmic Campus, a lion myself starved by Professor Kandinsky, dying in a lion's flophouse circus. I woke up mornings, the lion still added dying on the floor. "Terrible presence," I cried. "Eat me or die." It got up that afternoon, walked to the door with its paw on the wall to steady its trembling body, let out a soul-rending creak from the bottomless roof of his mouth, thundering from my floor to heaven, heavier than a volcano at night in Mexico, pushed the door open and said in a gravelly voice, "Not this time, baby, but I will be back again." Lion that eats my mind now for a decade, knowing only your hunger, not the bliss of your satisfaction. O roar of the universe, how am I chosen? In this life, I have heard your promise. I am ready to die. I have served your starved and ancient presence, O Lord. I wait in my room at your mercy. So we find three phases to this poem, all about different and developing relationship between the speaker and the lion that he lives with, the lion that he pursues and that also seems to pursue him. The first phase of the poem is that of a failed search, an outward search. It begins saying that he comes home and finds a lion in his living room. So the lion is in his home. It is in the structure of his life, in the living room. It's close to him. And what is his initial reaction? One of fear. He yells out the window, and then he runs out of the apartment. He goes back to the place where he grew up. But he's not so afraid that he doesn't want to come to terms with the lion, because then he goes out to find it, to understand it, to grasp it in some way. And he's looking in all the wrong places because, as we learned in the first line, the lion is in his home. But instead, he goes to psychotherapy. The person has nothing to offer him. He goes to his old lovers and relationships. These efforts fail. He ends up drunk, upset, lost, fighting, in this sad situation in a car on the street, seeming utterly dejected, but yet with the word lion first and foremost in his mind. He finds an old friend, another writer. He thinks that maybe they've got something in common. He shares his lion with him, but it turns out that this other person only wants to share their own thoughts with the narrator. They don't really hear him, and they don't really believe him, because they run away the next day, and he gets this letter saying, "There being no self and no bars, therefore the zoo of your dear father," capitalized, "hath no lion." So it turns out that someone who he thought understood him is, in fact, utterly divorced from this endeavor. They don't think there's any self, anything to find out, no bars. In other words, no separation, no unique identity, perhaps even no order and no difference. And there is no lion. You're pursuing a figment, and nothing is in pursuit of you. The letter goes on, "You said your mother was mad. Don't expect me to produce the monster for your bridegroom." And in fact, Ginsberg's mother did have a number of psychological challenges and was in and out of a number of institutions, which is dealt with at length in Kaddish. Don't expect me to produce the monster for your bridegroom. You've, in some sense, been hurt by or even lost something of where you came from. Now you're looking for something new to be joined to, not just casually, but wedded to, a purpose. And I won't give it to you. So we come to the end of the first phase of the poem, and we find that the speaker has engaged in a lot of self-destructive and utterly fruitless searching. He's going out, away, and in the wrong directions. Moving to the second phase of the poem, he's confused, dazed, but remembers the real lion starved at home. And so finally, he goes home. He's been wanting to find the lion, but in a way that may be familiar to us. He maybe in his heart wants to find it, but in his mind is enamored of the search and maybe doesn't want to look too hard in the right place because there may be a fear in finding the truth. But sometimes it feels really good to be after it, especially if you're after it in a way that doesn't require you to confront the fear or change that is a part of finding it. I don't know if you've also had that experience. The poem actually begins with a quote from another poem in French. It says, translated, "Be mute for me, contemplative idol," which has a wonderful double meaning that reflects the conflict in the poem. On the one hand, let me contemplate you in a way that doesn't require me to give up the other things I like and doesn't result in you actually breaking into my world. But on the other hand, it's the idol that he is telling to be mute. So perhaps all the other things that are distracting me from the actual desires of my heart, you be mute for me and give me the mercy of letting me pursue truth. Returning to the speaker, finally he decides to face it, and he does what he knew was the right thing to do all along, to just go home where the lion in fact is, waiting for him, where he's seen the evidence that it's there. He opens the door. The lion is in there, roaring hungrily, but it's a personal lion. It's for him. Nobody outside can hear the roaring. He sees the neighboring apartment buildings in deafening stillness. He's eye to eye with the lion, and the lion greets him. It's a fang greeting, a greeting that is not without consequence, but that he feels does not mean him harm, because he turns his back to make dinner and takes a bath. He didn't eat me, though I regretted him starving in my presence. And now we get deeper into this relationship with the lion. He has been hungry for the lion. The lion has been pursuing him. not literally. Literally, the lion has been right in his home where he was waiting for him all along, but nonetheless pursuing him in his heart. His heart has been hungry for the lion, because when he goes out into all of his failed relationships, his desires, his attempt at escape, even his family, as he goes out to all these places, it's the lion that is motivating him, that is moving him, that is out after him, and that he's after. And so that connection is in the center of what he's doing, is going out to all these places. And so the lion is pursuing him, and he's hungry for it. But when he finally finds it, what we discover is that the lion is also hungry. The lion is hungry for him, as he is hungry for the lion. But the lion will not eat him. In fact, as he has suffered his own desires, he suffers the lion's desire for him. He wasted away a sick rug full of bones, laying his huge, hairy head on paws. I averted my eyes from his hungry, moth-eaten face. The speaker has nightmares. And then comes this interesting line, "Stopped eating myself," which has a number of meanings. Maybe most literally that he does not eat in order to starve with the lion together, which is in its own way a source of mutual finding and fidelity. But it could also mean stopped eating myself. In other words, stopped consuming myself, which could be either an end to self-destruction, a using up of the self in the search, or perhaps an end of selfishness. I've stopped consuming myself. In other words, I've stopped thinking that I was the source of nourishment. And so now, here they are, both starving together. The lion still added, dying on the floor, and he says, "Terrible presence," I cried, "eat me or die." And the lion says, "Not yet." And this is why the lion doesn't eat him, because what's called for from the speaker is an act of surrender. In his heart, he wants the lion. The lion surprises him, and he goes after him, misdirected at first, but then closer later. He builds a relationship. He finds the lion isn't what he expected. The lion wants him. The lion is pursuing him because he's hungry for him, but it is an act of surrender on the part of the speaker to find finally the thing that he wants. This act of surrender is hard. Terrible presence, he says to the lion. He's been running around doing other things. He's been consuming himself. He's not ready to be consumed. But yet he says, "Eat me or die. I can't bear this situation. Either you have to consume me and get this over with, but I can't continue to watch you dying. I'm trying to get to an ultimate place beyond both my hunger and yours. So eat me or die." He comes to a point of surrender, but the lion says, "Not yet," because it is not complete surrender. He still wants the lion to be the one to do it. Terrible presence, eat me. You do it. You finish it. Because I cannot bear how badly you want me. Perhaps I cannot bear you chasing me out in all of these misdirected searches. But see, that's still an act of the lion. He's come to the point where he has the desire to be consumed, to allow himself to enter into this relationship with this greater thing that he wants. He's come to terms with its hunger for him and with consumption. But he won't give himself to it. He wants it to take him because of the overwhelming nature of his belonging to it. But that's not all the way. All the way comes in the third and final phase of the poem, where he says explicitly what we have read into everything thus far. Lion that eats my mind now for a decade, knowing only your hunger. You've been pursuing me, you won't let me go. And I've known your hunger for me, but not the bliss of your satisfaction. Now he realizes there is bliss in it. O roar of the universe, how am I chosen? This has a notion of privilege to it, that your hunger for me, my destiny for you, out of all of this great creation, how could it be that it's for me? And yet it is. In this life I have heard your promise, and now the final actual submission, not take me, but I come to you. He says, I am ready to die. I have served your starved and ancient presence, O Lord. I wait in my room at your mercy. This is how it is. God wants us, and we want him. He made us because he loves us. And we're looking for this love, and as Augustine says, there is no hunger unless there exists a fulfillment to that hunger. And the good things, the love that we are after, are this desire for God. As Augustine also says, the heart wants good things, even when it's going after them the wrong way. It may become selfish. It may become material. It may go into wrongly directed relationships, but because it is seeking this ultimate love. Look at the speaker in the poem. He wants to be loved and understood. And his human relationships aren't doing it. The drugs aren't doing it. Pleasure is not doing it. His own self is not enough, and he knows it. The lion is pursuing him through all these things. He realizes there's something greater that he is trying to get at, and they won't get him all the way there. But when the good is directed to the ultimate good, then there is relationship. That relationship grows and grows into the point where one becomes ready to surrender to that relationship and to make the move of faith and to trust God. Like the phases of the poem, the speaker runs away, then he trusts enough to come back home, then he trusts enough to turn his back to cook dinner, then he trusts enough to stop eating himself and to be beside the lion in its hunger. Then he trusts enough to say, terrible presence, eat me or die. And then he trusts enough to say, I am ready to die. I have served your starved and ancient presence, O Lord. I wait in my room at your mercy. The lion was waiting for him, and now he is waiting for the lion. Christ says in the gospel, your mind is busy with many things, but you have need of only one thing. We are all flawed. We are all hungry. We are all searching. Do we know what we need to find? Are we courageous enough to find it? It's interesting how the starving of the lion is hard for the speaker. It reminds me of the Psalm 22, which is about the crucifixion. It says, "They opened their mouth against me, lions that rend and roar. Like water my life drains away, all my bones are disjointed. My heart has become like wax, it melts away within me. As dry as a potsherd is my throat. My tongue cleaves to my palate, you lay me in the dust of death. Dogs surround me, a pack of evildoers closes in on me. They have pierced my hands and my feet, I can count all my bones." I can count all my bones, like the starved lion on the floor, wasted away, a sick rug full of bones, wheaten hair falling out. The lion pursues us, even to death, even through death, to the resurrection beyond. The lion pursues us. God goes there for us, to the deepest suffering, isolation, loss, loneliness, failure, debasement. He goes there for us, to find us. He starves for us, dies for us. It does take courage to be face to face with a God that loves you, that wants you that much. To be face to face with a starving lion that will not eat you, but lets you choose to give your heart to the God that it really wants.